Recap of Dutton Ranch Season 1 Episode 5, takes a chance to bring Rip and Beth back to their former self. Taylor Sheridan Universe interviews. I was worried that Dutton Ranch Season 1 Episode 3 would attempt to veer off course and postpone what had captivated us. To be clear, if the Duttons do not play the Jacksons, there would be no Dutton Ranch Season 1. Placing the families in a straight line of confrontation was the main goal of the series opener. I'm worried and perplexed by what happens on Dutton Ranch in Season 1, Episode 5, Peaceful Find Peace. After losing their herd to foot and mouth, Beth and Rip find themselves in a difficult situation. Without cattle, their ranch would not exist. As a result, the show returns them to their former roles as Beth's earner and Rip as a ranch foreman. Although the new dynamics are intriguing, I didn't join up for them to collaborate with the Jacksons, who could benefit from their services. I enlisted on behalf of the Duttons, defending Texas, not Yellowstone, from outside dangers. Keeping the Adapative alive. They still need to make ends meet now that their ranch is nearly dead, so it makes sense. Whoever said, "Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life," was somewhat correct. For more than 20 years, Rip served as the foreman of one of the biggest ranches on the planet. Given that 10p is what he does best, his hiring there is not out of character. It's entertaining to witness the return of the former Rip, the powerful man who terrifies cowboys. It is simply wonderful that he has arrived at the 10p bunkhouse. He tells everyone what to do without introducing himself, and they comply. The current foreman's poor performance at work is somewhat to blame, but submission also plays a role. In a cowboy way, it's kind of hot. These men appear rough to the outside world and will undoubtedly break your teeth, but as soon as the foreman gives an order, it's, "Yes, sir, no questions asked." In a single day, Rip establishes supremacy, corrects the bunkhouse, expels Chet, and wins Beulah over. He also finds out that the 10p has been making a terrible effort to conceal the information. Managing the small fires that have been developing on his own ranch has made Rip miss his love of being a cowboy. He appears truly joyful. He and Beulah genuinely like each other, I'd venture. They converse in a common language that uses few words to convey ideas. It stands in stark contrast to Beulah and Beth meeting and developing a new kind of connection. They had a difficult beginning, but the Duttons need money and what has to be done must be done. The connection between Beulah and Beth is adversarial. They don't like each other and are suspicious, if not afraid, of each other, despite the fact that they need each other. There is tension throughout the entire pitch sequence. It seems as though either Beulah would simply pull out a gun and shoot her, or Beth will strike with an incriminating piece of information. However, Beth doesn't want to fight since she believes that 10p has a heritage that should be preserved. Yellowstone may not have been a success, but she tried her hardest. By the end, Beth and Rip have returned to a familiar setting. I haven't decided how I feel about it yet, though. Allow a young man to grow from his errors. However, I have no doubts about Carter's narrative this hour. He continues his "I'm a cowboy" performance and spends time with Dwight and his leopard rather than going to school. Surprisingly, Carter receives wise counsel from elderly guy Dwight. Occasionally, a young man has to hear the same thing his parents have said from a complete stranger in order to digest it appropriately and not act out. When Dwight is shot and killed by a police officer, the universe gives Carter's cowboy ideal a harsh reality check. Carter's odd Tiger King subplot ends abruptly and shadily, but it forces him to see the exact dead-end path he was creating for himself. Rio Paloma actually has a new sheriff, and he is not playing around, even though the entire situation appears suspicious. I'm both excited and afraid of Sheriff Wade because he's an uncontrollable wild cannon. It's difficult to predict who he could support given the rising anxiety over Wes' absence, but I have a suspicion that he is leaning toward the victim. I will help him defeat the Jacksons. Gut feel. Peaceful Find Peace is an unexpected episode. I thought the writers would just throw the Duttons a new herd out of thin air, but instead they are making them work for it. It's unclear if it will be beneficial in the long run. If I wasn't previously concerned about Beth and Rip's new life in Texas, I most definitely am now. After the Montana fire, they believed they were beginning over, but now that they lack a herd, their livelihood is in jeopardy. It ain't a ranch without a herd, as Rip states in the opening scene of this week. What's next? Rip asks Everett for a favor while they determine what Plan B looks like. He really needs a job. He is picked up by Everett and brought to the 10-Petal Ranch, where Rip meets Beulah on the spur of the moment, that is, without being invited. It's a good thing Everett is present to maintain decorum. Given Beth's unwillingness to trust the Duttons, it's an intriguing development that Rip offers himself as the 10-Petal's foreman. Beulah first questions his capacity to oversee both ranches concurrently, but first, we are aware that the Dutton Ranch is completely devoid of livestock, and second, Rip notes that the Yellowstone ranch he managed in Montana was significantly larger than their 2 Texas ranches put together. Given that Chet isn't the most capable, we haven't seen any proof, but we'll take their word for it, and RobWill is currently in rehab. In the middle of the managerial fiasco, Rip consents to take over the Jackson family's 2,200 cows. Rip has no idea that a murder cover-up is underway on this side of the fence. Beth tries to offer him some other possibilities on his first pre-dawn morning at work. She may, for example, return to her job. However, returning to the finance industry would necessitate her being in Dallas or another major city, most definitely not Rio Paloma. I guess that's not quite the Yellowstone mood, but I kind of wanted a Beth spin-off to take place in a high-powered industry-like setting. Rip goes to the 10-Petal Ranch because he wants her close by. When Rip enters the 10-Petal bunkhouse and sees the cowboys eating breakfast and getting ready for the day, he makes a good first impression. Chet is not happy about his demotion because he hasn't been told yet and is casually nude for no other purpose than to flaunt his tattoos. It's good to see Rip back in action, bossing men around and shaking his head as he disciplines these cowboys. Additionally, Chet and Austin soon resume their arguments about Wes. It's helpful for Rip to know that something is going on beneath the surface, but they still need to settle down. At last, he has a conversation with Austin and learns the complete details of Wes's disappearance. That is undoubtedly sufficient for Rip to begin connecting the dots and acknowledge that he was also involved in Wes's body's concealment. Chet is hanging out at the bunkhouse, tending to his battered face with a cold can of Coors, when Rip enters and fires him. Chet tells Rip that the Jacksons will eat him alive as he leaves, cursing at everyone. Later, Chet takes his grievances to Joaquin, reminding the Jackson scion that he has some important information regarding Wes. He also mentions remembering y'all's cattle, which strengthens my argument that the Jacksons purposefully infected the herd at the Dutton Ranch. Joaquin hands him a fistful of money and immediately threatens to kill him if he doesn't leave. RobWill appears later in the show while sniffing coke with a woman in a hotel room. I suppose his time in rehab was short. Beulah invites Rip over for wine and brisket as dusk approaches. Rip tells her about how he first fell in love with Beth when he was 15 years old, back in Montana, while defending his decision to fire Chet. Beautiful, intelligent, fierce, tender, raw, is how he describes Beth, and it's all true. Beulah offers him a pay of $9,000 a month, but Rip raises it to $11,000, or around $132,000 annually, which seems inadequate considering the amount of work he's doing. Back at the ranch, Beth is reading articles on the patio and doing a lot of research on Google in an attempt to come up with a strategy to save the Dutton Ranch. Zachariah, whom she claims her father would have liked, and she spend a brief moment together. When Everett visits the ranch to deliver the mare they jointly saved at the beginning of the season, she stops reading. They take her for a stroll and talk about Rip's new work. Everett refers to him as a lucky man, but he doesn't realize that after all the sacrifices, including murder, he made for John Dutton, Rip has actually experienced poor luck. It was intended for Texas to be a semi-retirement scheme. Additionally, Beth and I both express our lack of trust in Beulah. The healed mare was immediately released onto the ranch's fields to wander around. Back at home in the evening, Beth leaves Carter a note stating that dinner is on the stove, but she has no idea that he hasn't been attending school. The mother and son are still unable to communicate. He was actually back at Dwight's earlier that day, feeding Orina and Xena the leopard. Additionally present is Orina's bodyguard, whom Dwight refers to as Big Gun. Beth presents herself as Beulah's best option. She would do a better job of recession-proofing the ranch than Joaquin. Although Beulah puts on a brave front for Beth, we know that she has been overburdened and worn down by running the ranch, so this must be an alluring proposition to her. It's a simple way out. The issue here is that Beulah's skeletons are still unknown to Beth. The conditions include a 5-year contract, 20% of the revenues going to Beth, and the Dutton name not appearing. When Beulah tells Joaquin that she has been sold, he refers to her as a cockroach after an atomic bomb. Beth has been hired. Things on Dutton Ranch are going to get really juicy with these two sides of the tale entangled. Particularly when Rip eventually tells Beth about getting rid of Wes's body at the end of the episode, and Beth is surprisingly understanding. Following the devastating loss of their herd to that dreaded hoof-and-mouth disease, thanks for nothing, Bullet, Beth and Rip start making plans to return to the top, which seem to include Rip taking over as the 10-Petal Ranch's foreman. Say what? Beulah is also taken aback by Rip's interest in the job, but she is open to the idea because Chet, the current foreman, is a F***king idiot. As soon as another employee informs Rip of what he suspects Chet did to Wes, Rip quickly eliminates the bad seed from the property and sends Chet packing. Chet doesn't go gently either. As he leaves, he sneers, "The Jacksons are going to chew you up, spit you out, and forget you ever had a name. All right, tell us something we don't know." In addition, Chet confronts Joaquin about his dismissal and threatens to expose RobWill as Wes' murderer in addition to any dubious side business Joaquin may have had with the cattle. Joaquin encourages Chet to choose wisely by reminding him that there are 2 ways to depart a ranch. Chet. Shrewd. I hope you succeed in it. Furthermore, Rip is not the only family member joining the 10-Petal Ranch's workforce. Beth arrives with some business of her own only minutes after Rip and Beulah consummate their alliance over an abundance of brisket. Beth presents herself as Beulah's new strategy and promises to make 10-Petal a household name with a line of bespoke, recession-proof cuts of meat after disclosing that HMD killed the Dutton Ranch's herd, quite a secret to divulge. The sole disclaimer? The deal will never include the Dutton name. Carter tells Dwight about the sick herd and how much he wants he could go back to Montana over drinks after Orena is told to go home. He is reminded by Dwight how young he is and how much of his life is still ahead of him. For a 19-year-old, however, Carter is quite determined to achieve independence at this very moment. Later, when the police arrive, Carter is changing Dwight's light bulb. Dwight tries to flee, but he is eventually cornered by the cops. Carter quickly learns that Dwight was shot by Sheriff Wade and was bleeding to death from Zena's cage after making the foolish decision to chase after his new companion. Dwight was carrying a knife, but it was concealed on his belt. Since the federal Big Cat Public Safety Act was passed in 2022, keeping leopards is officially forbidden in Texas, despite the state's generally permissive rules regarding exotic pets. However, it seems excessive to murder Dwight for it. Wade calls Dwight "cow shit" at the sheriff's station, accusing him of stealing from the elderly and committing insurance fraud. Carter had begun to think of him as a buddy, whether or not that was the case. Even before the season is halfway over, Carter has already been arrested twice. He is not headed in the right direction. For some reason, the sheriff agrees not to tell his parents about the arrest, and Johnny escapes punishment once more. Orena and Big Gun pick Carter up on the road as he is making his way back to his truck. It's been a tough day, and Carter breaks down. Wade is already busy in the sheriff's office when Joaquin, who is once again on West cleanup duty, pays him a visit. Whitney has been hiding her tracks, and Wade hasn't heard from her. Joaquin is concerned because Wade hasn't even been able to find any financial activity from the fugitive. On Everett's advice, Beth chooses to visit Beulah that same evening shortly after Rip departs, giving her some expensive scotch. After putting the pleasantries aside, Beth tells Beulah about their herd's culling. The 10-Petal Ranch's history of surviving numerous crises throughout the years turned out to be the subject of Beth's all-day inquiry. After 190 years, Beth has concluded that the 10-Petal Ranch is not doing well financially and is just one catastrophe away from going bankrupt. Joaquin is shocked to learn that Beulah has given a Dutton his job, but Beulah explains that she is taking the long view in this situation. Beulah informs Joaquin that Rip and Beth have secrets. And I've learned that people with secrets can be useful, corruptible even. However, this does not imply that Beulah is in the lead. You give me a week, I'll know everything there is to know about Beulah Jackson, Beth assures Rip when she gets home to bring him the good news. Unfortunately, her husband tells her right away that he recently discovered a dead body floating across from the 10-petal on the Dutton Ranch. Indeed, peace will have to wait. Well, at least this week we found out that Beth's rescue horse is doing well. Isn't that something to be happy about? Rip and Beth are receiving leverage to wage a war. How long can Beth and Rip actually collaborate with Beulah before their relationship deteriorates or even becomes antagonistic? This is the question that everyone is wondering. According to Dutton Ranch actor Mark Menchaca, who portrays Zachariah, Rip's new right-hand guy, it won't be long. Menchaca said of this precarious partnership, based on Beth and Rip's history, I don't think it's going to last long, to TV Line. Nevertheless, he has faith that Rip and Beth are capable of having sex with Beulah. I think they are going to have some leverage to wage in a war, he continues. I'm not saying they're going to take over the Jacksons' ranch, but I think they're going to be on the path to making their own destiny. Dwight, R.I.P. In the meantime, it doesn't appear that Dutton Ranch will provide the campy Joe Exotic plot we were hoping for Dwight, guest actor Ray McKinnon. In episode 5, a visit from the police awakens Carter's new boss from a drunken cat nap, causing him to leave the premises, leaving Carter and his valuable leopard on their own. Carter attempts to elude the police as well, but they soon catch up to him and hand him a pair of handcuffs. Unfortunately, Dwight finds it difficult to escape. In front of Carter, he is shot and bleeds to death. Knowing full well that Dwight wasn't shot in self-defense, Carter informs Sheriff Wade, guest actor Josh Stewart, that people will be curious about his demise. Smart people don't ask questions, Wade responds. How smart are you, son? In exchange for his freedom, Carter essentially consents to be silent, but when Orina comes to pick him up, he collapses in her arms. It's the kind of startling demise that serves as a reminder that nobody is secure in the world of Dutton Ranch, a dread that cast member Mark Menchaca, Zachariah, is all too familiar with. Personally, I'm always worried about getting killed off, because I die in everything I'm in, he tells TV Line. I didn't die in Curb Your Enthusiasm, but who does? Menchaca says, I think anything is up for grabs, regarding who might go next. I think it would be a horrible idea for them to kill a good guy who recently got out of jail, even though it is sometimes popular to kill off people's favorite characters. Alright, Zach is secure for the time being. Beth won't back down. Almost every scene is clouded by the consequences from the prior episode. Rio Paloma's future is unknown, tensions are still high, and the ranch is experiencing financial difficulties. Beth starts searching for leverage right away while Rip concentrates on stabilizing daily operations. Beulah, whose increasing power in the neighborhood is a threat as well as a possible ally, offers that opportunity. Instead of waiting for things to get better, Beth takes an aggressive approach, which is the only strategy she knows. The episode's focal point is their discussions, which show that Beth still views every relationship as a possible commercial deal. The fact that neither woman has complete faith in the other is what keeps the plot moving. Every conversation is like a game of chess, with both parties attempting to figure out who is really in the lead. Beth's method leads to new issues. The fact that Beth hasn't altered much since leaving Montana is one of Dutton Ranch's most intriguing features. Even though Texas might seem a new beginning, Beth nevertheless tackles every challenge in the same manner, find the leverage, exert pressure, and make things go her way. Episode 5 explains why she has been so effective over the years with that tactic. Beth can notice opportunities that others miss because she is willing to take chances and make tough choices. Now, let's discuss, did you find it surprising that Rip and Beth entered Beulah's world so fast? Are you going to pour one out for old Dwight? Please leave a comment below with your comments on episode 5.
I named her Xena after I named her Xena after the